what is the thinking that's here now? What are we thinking about? Or what are the parts? Or what's arising in the foreground for us now? Like Dave described again, the weather, the fuel, planning. What's our version of that? What I'm having for lunch, the work I'm doing, my calendar, taking care of this body. What are we managing? What are the thoughts, feelings, and sensations that are in the foreground for us right now? Or what are the parts that are here? And then in this, as we begin, there's a little bit of duality, a little bit of separation. We kind of maybe, if they're the foreground, and then there's this beingness that's always here, perhaps as the background, perhaps as the space that it arises in. What's the flavor of the space, of the beingness that's here? What's the flavor? What's your word for it? Some of us, it's even hard to find a word. Maybe it's equanimity, it's peace, it's stillness, it's silence, it's love, it's welcoming. What's your flavor of the beingness? What's your word for it? In an effortless IFS, that's the first view, just the discernment between the two, the awareness of the two, the foreground and the background. And then there's the second view, the welcoming. It's just the welcoming of everything that arises. There's just, I am this openness. I am this stillness. I am this peace, this love. And the thoughts, feelings, and sensations are just welcomed and loved, like Rumi's beloved. That's where we play with Rumi's guest house. Everything that arises is just a guest that's welcomed and entertained. Since that they're soaking in the infinite hot tub. This is where there's no aversion. There's just a welcoming and love of what is. How does that play in your system with the thinking, the sensations, the to-doing? Then we go to the third view, which we glimpse off and on. Some of us, I don't know if our friend Michael might just live here full time. It's where everything is just pervaded by or of this beingness, of this silence, this stillness, this peace, this love, this unity. What's that like? Our friend Jack yesterday was speaking of this as the everything. The everything. As Dave's beautiful setting he's in, everything is of this. Everything is of the sky, the ocean, the land, the peace. Everything is of this. What is everything of? What is everything made of that arises? Is there a sameness in the essence? Is the contraction different from the love? Is the shame different from the bliss? Is the peace different from the hate? All of this. And then we might have some parts. We might have a part, a spiritual achiever part, that's like, yes, that's better when everything is of this, everything is this. But that's just one voice inside of us that says, kind of like, well, spiritual achiever, come on, Dorothy, go down that yellow brick road, go further, find the witch's broom. But really, can we find the beauty and okayness of all of this, however it's showing up in our system? If it's an either or, if it's a welcoming, or if it's everything. Can all of that be welcomed and enjoyed? That's my last place with this. Can we find an enjoyment, an innocence in how things are showing up? If Dave shows up as Dave shows up with, wow, there's so much that I'm thinking about. I'm captain. There's a lot going on. Or if Dave shows up of, I am the bliss of being. I am the sky. There is no head here. I am that. Is one better than the other? Or is it all this dance, this expression, this life? Is there a different enjoyment of Dave if he's more Captain Dave, planning, coordinating, or if he's the headless Dave? And then in our systems, for us, can we find a similar enjoyment if Chris is thinking about his life, planning? Maybe there's even some stress here, thinking about plans, or Jax, there's needing to coordinate something, an investment, a choice, a book. Or if there's just the headlessness of I am, can all of that be enjoyed? And in closing, what's it like to be you? What's it like to be you? What's it like to be here as this you that's perhaps both this infinite bliss, peace, unity, and this you that's like, here I am in this 57-year-old body of Sid in August, in time, in form, in space. What's it like to be you? What's it like to be Chris? What's it like to be Chris? What's it like to be here now as Chris, as Jack, as Dave, as Michael? Can how you doing with that? Is there like an enjoyment of, wow, here I am. Here I am, whatever this I am is. Can the I am be all of it? Can the I am be the everything and the fullness of whatever day this is? Here we are in our bodies in different locations. Dave that's in this beautiful space, and us in our homes. And then when you're ready, come back together. As we come back together, just to notice how are you? Like what's here? What's this like being you? And as you're with that, just maybe just from a distance, if you can, I'll do my little housekeeping, but you don't pay too much attention to it because this is the beauty of where you are in my housekeeping is just that I'm a mediator, I'm not a psychotherapist, and we're just friends getting together and exploring. Everyone's good being responsible for their own journeys. If I could get a thumbs up. And then as always, I've got the recording on, but only my image is recorded, however, the audio that you share is. And if there's any discomfort, if you prefer not being recorded, just let me know and I'll make you a co-host. And you can push pause when you share things, or we can yeah, or at the end, if you say a certain thing you didn't like, let me know and I'll delete it. Everyone's good that this might be shared. If I could get a thumbs up, please. Great. All right. What's here? Who's got something to share with us?
I can share something.
Wonderful. Michael, it's so nice to see you. Hi.
You too, and nice to see everybody. Uh, well, for me, the biggest thing that comes to attention is the sensation in the body. So I know when I kind of sink in, so to say, the first things I notice is the tension in my neck and like a bit of tension in my back and some tension in my eyes. So, and then there is a bit of a resistance to that and a kind of desire to relax those areas and occasionally some thoughts coming us about like, oh, I should maybe I shouldn't have watched uh, so many videos because now I have some tension in my eyes, things like that. But the thoughts are rare. There is kind of generally more silence, but occasional emotions and undertones. There is a kind of undertone of bit of tension, like the tension that is related to the tension in the body. So yeah.
And what's the relation with the thoughts? What are the thoughts? The thoughts that come about the body, the thoughts that come about, oh, watch the videos, maybe I shouldn't have watched too many videos. Are those thoughts like, are they kind of echoes from a distance? Are they way off in the background? Or are they more imminent? Where do you hear them? Where are they?
Yeah, I like that question. Yeah, most are very, very distant. It's like an echo that I need to really look into to find it actually. Like I need to explicitly kind of ask myself what thoughts are there to find them. Occasionally there are thoughts that are quite strong. Uh, but yeah, most of the time, most of the thoughts are very, very practical, just about the I moved to a new house, so I've been kind of focusing a lot on, okay, what kind of furniture I need, what do I need to fix? So that's been most of my thoughts around that. Or, like thoughts about food when I'm eating, or I just like ordered food, so I'm waiting for it to arrive. And then thinking, oh, I'm gonna have to pause this at some point because I will have to come back and to get my food delivery and then come back. So kind of things like that. Mostly just very circumstantial.
When they're, or just first off, before I ask this next question, just for all of us, we got Michael back with us today, and as we hear him speak and we feel his system, we feel how he speaks about this and how, like, what's the flavor of beingness that you find here? Like in IFS, like say it's all about this exploration of self, of beingness, or even fundamental well-being. You can use Jeffrey's word. What flavor of this do you experience from Michael? And how is this interesting for our systems? Like it's almost like a key on the piano. What's this key that Michael's coming from? And is there a gift for us in that? Whoa, wow, the spaciousness, maybe like what's your word for what you experience in Michael? Like, is it peace? Is it equanimity? Is it silence, stillness, love, emptiness? What's your word for it? And can you find a frequency, like a flavor, a feel of it? How does it resonate in your system? Kind of like when people go to satsang, they say it's not the words, it's like being in the presence of, and we get to do that with each of us today. What's this that we get from Michael? How does that translate in your system? And then my curiosity, Michael, is when the thoughts are strong, what's that like? Does it does it blend anymore? Does it identify? Is there a sense of when it's strong? Does the body vibrate as those thoughts or the resistance or the wanting? Does that still happen? Does it become immediate? Can it obscure this stillness, this peace that's here? What happens when the strong thoughts are here?
Usually it's related to some sort of strong external stimuli or physical or occasionally emotional, like if there is strong physical pain or some sort of like there's a strong noise or something like that. Or occasionally there are some emotional things that come up, and then there would be more active thoughts and more active thinking. Um, it does not. There is always that sense of um, there is always that part that just sort of sees it, that observes it. Um, at least recently, as far as I remember, like the thoughts might be very strong, the drive to do something about some sort of situation or some emotion might be quite strong, but there is always the part that also sees it and notices it. Uh, and there can be resistance as well. So that suddenly happens. Yeah.
Thank you. So what's this like as we hear Michael again, if you play with foreground and background parts and beingness, as we hear the equation or the ratio in his system, is that attractive? Or is this like, because our friend Dave and I often talk about simultaneous awareness of like the aliveness and the awake awareness, the relation between the two, the being in time and this timelessness. And we can hear a different ratio in each of us about how it's playing right now. And as we hear it in Michael, is that like, wow, that's very attractive. I'd like more of that. I'd like a little bit more of this beingness as I hear in him. Or is it like, no, I like the equation as it plays in me right now, or as it plays in Jack and Dave? Can we feel that? The relationship between, and Michael describes it, the thinking and this beingness, this awareness. If we can hear the equation of those two. And in Jeffrey, he'll just describe this as locations and layers. If we can kind of even feel that out, we're almost doing this in the mystic way that Jeffrey has words and graph for it. We're kind of feeling it out in each other's system. Anything else, Michael?
Yeah. Also, if I can add to that a little bit, my general perception of it is it's all sort of it's all there at the same time for me. Like I just in different measure. Like there is always some sort of conditioning, there is always some sort of emotions, there is always some kind of thoughts, but like at different times, different things sort of go up and go down depending on circumstances. But like all of these things are always kind of there. That's how it seems. And like occasionally, if something happens and like circumstance, like I might feel like some sort of extreme fear or anger or something, and usually it goes away pretty quickly, but it's like things vary a lot, and most of the time it's kind of peaceful, but sometimes something gets triggered, and but there is always a sense of all things being there, just in kind of different proportion at different times. Yeah, I don't know if that makes sense.
Yes. I'm gonna open this up. I'm curious how this is bubbling for everyone as we explore with what you just shared. But before we go there, please notice any parts that come up in response to Michael's sharing. Is there a comparative part, one that's perhaps comparing how life is playing in us with how it's playing in Michael? And is that interesting that there's a comparative part? Is there perhaps a spiritual achiever that's showing up? Like, hey, something Michael shared, that's very attractive. I'd like some of that for myself. Can we notice those voices and just include those as well? They're just these precious helper aspects of us. All right, what's coming up for everybody as we hear Michael share?
First thing is one of the things coming up is that I'm just really happy to see each one of you. I like each one of you. I remember you from other times, and for whatever reasons, the POKs I've done, I haven't been seeing you guys lately, and that's one thing coming up. Each one of us, yeah.
I like the um, listening to Michael because it's the same thing, different flavor. Um, obviously, I mean, you're even in a different time zone, so where you're at in your day is a different place, but and the things you're going through are different, but just the kind of way it all comes together is um, very it's all kind of all the same, just a different flavor of the day than what I experience or what I hear other people say.
I love that. It's just this like the joy of life is just expressed. It's a different flavor in each of us. As Chris is like, oh, just the enjoyment of being together and seeing each other, these visual expressions. And then Dave, it's like, yes, how it's expressing through Michael in a different part of the world, and how it's expressing through Jack and Chris and Sid. It's just all of that. The joy of this expression. What's to go next with how life is moving through you? This, what's the flavor of the background, this being, this, the fundamental well-being, and what's the foreground? What's happening? What's this relationship like? What's going on?
Yeah, um, the speaking of awareness as a part, which is what I think I heard Michael say. Um, yeah, I guess it doesn't. I don't really see it that way. It's way. It's it's much. It's way more of a nothing. Like if I could say it was a part, that wouldn't be it because I can't really describe it. So the idea of not being afraid to slip into nihilism, or that that's really what's occurring, but to see a, awareness, that this unconditioned awareness, I'll call it, as a nothing, has sort of been helpful for me to sort of clarify it. Um, yeah. So how could you lose a nothing, right? And yet the moment I try to describe it, I know I've lost it because I'm trying to describe it. All the paradoxes around it are, yeah, I'm kind of enjoying them, I guess. Like the idea of being beyond, like what's beyond enjoying? So you talk about enjoying it, right? And I'm thinking, well, that feels kind of dualistic. And I know you like to put a capital letter on and forget about it, but the idea of enjoying versus not enjoying and somehow being neither one of those two seems pure, maybe would be a good word. So that's kind of where I'm coming from, I guess. That's what's going on here.
Wow.
Also, I, I had a, I was, I was trying to really sit with what I heard on your 1, 2, and 3 different, whatever you call them, like perspectives or whatever. And I just found it really, really difficult to even tell a difference between 2 and 3. It was like, how are they even different? So that came up for me. But yeah, that's kind of what
Wow.
was been going on. That's a little bit in the past, and that's okay. You guys don't mind if I do that.
Wow. This enjoying versus not enjoying. What's beyond enjoying. But it's almost interesting in this way. Some of these people I listen to on YouTube, including kind of Annalisa Edelberg, who's presented a few times at POK. He speaks of going to the top of the mountain, going to this place that Jack's talking about and pointing to. And then she says, then we kind of come down a little bit. Then we come back down, and we come down some into perhaps Jack, Sid, Michael, Dave, and Chris. Like here we are on August 16th at whatever time it is, and wherever we are. And it's like, that's really interesting for me. You could say it's like the nothing that Jack's pointing to. It's just like, this is what the unconditional awareness is, the nothing. And then there's the coming down from the mountaintop some into the something, the simultaneity of the something. And I find that line a little bit in what Jack was saying with what Michael was sharing. When Michael shared, there was an observer that was kind of even a part that was observing. Like, can there be this awareness that's both from the awareness that is, which we were also hearing in Michael, there's just this awareness that is as this beingness, and then this awareness, this part, like this is often in the journey, in as I read different traditions, there's often a place before the top of the mountaintop where there's an observer, right? Where there's just a witness. And then just even Jack and I were talking yesterday, and he was describing how that observer kind of dissolved into the everythingness. Like, what's that step for all of us between the top of the mountain, whatever the top of the mountain is for you, where there's just, as Jack says, there's nothing. Maybe it's like it can even feel like nihilism, this nothingness beyond enjoyment. And then we come down from the top a little bit into the human, more into the humanness, as Jack will call it, the something sometimes, and the nothing. Any thoughts, Jack? And then we'll open it up for everybody. Or how'd I do with that? How did I do? Am I getting it? How am I doing?
Oh, you're doing what you do, Sid.
Where we go with this? Yeah, Chris, I mean, Jack just opened up this gargantuan, exquisite thing.
Oh, he just introduced my show for today. With that, but via the Sid, which is the coming down from the mountain story. Sometimes I haven't been careful enough to not say it, but I had this opinion when I first came across POK that it might be very good. POK apparently was extremely good at giving people all kinds of tastes of things, but I had serious doubts about whether I was thinking it might be like speed reading. People didn't seem to carry the ambience I was looking for that I considered a deep spirituality, the vibration, the ambience, etc. I now think that my concern about that needn't have been there, that there's some truth in that. I'm seeing some real depth in that. But on the other hand, there's some truth in it, and it's showing up in the land of the Chris. What I mean by that is that, well, both by association with the three guys, Ross Alaric and Luciano, and some other stuff in POK, it seems that some of us have moved a long distance in terms of locations, but I'm not so sure about the layers. But I'm not saying that hasn't happened too, in a sense. So at the start of this, Jack and I were talking for a moment before the cameras and stuff got going. And I asked him, "Oh, I haven't seen you for a while." I was concerned that either you had transcended, died, or gotten bored. And he said something like, I don't know if I see a lot of difference between those three things. Is that sort of it, Jack? Well, that's the problem I'm having is, unfortunately, I'm exactly that, seemed to be that exact case that I was concerned about, where you go up the mountain. This is where it comes to the Sid part. You go up the mountain, POK stuff, you get in with the right guys, right ways, do a lot of GAs. You start to get all kinds of different locations. I don't know if I haven't glimpsed at least any jhana, any location, any layer that exists. Only one thing is I'm real sure I'm not resident in the quote deepest, farthest ones as far as being completely living there. And I I said to some people once, it's kind of like I planted a bunch of bok choy in my garden. And when the big ones started to go to seed, flower, and mature, the half-grown ones started all maturing, going to seed too. They never got to the full size. Well, I'm one of those. Exactly the concern I had about the speed reading version of spirituality that I thought might exist in POK. I'm now sure it exists because it seems to be existing in the Chris. So it was not what I wanted, but it's clear that, like Luciano says, it has a life of its own process. And so that's what's happening.
So how about this ambience, Chris? The sense of this ambience that
Mm.
the speed reading, we got the locations, we're kind of going along, or we could do it. I mean, Rostall was crazy, right? He did his initial shift, and then within a couple months, he like traveled the whole spectrum. He describes like the location 20 or whatever that is. I mean, it was crazy, but the speed reading version of this. But then here we are. Perhaps that's what we're doing here is celebrating the ambience. I mean, look what Jack, we got Jack here, right? And like the ambience of what Jack's sharing from it our friend Dave, who hasn't even, was about to speak. And it's like, we don't like the ambience and what I was pointing to with Michael. It's like, we don't want to miss that ambience, that note, that flavor of fundamental well-being. And it's almost like for those seedlings that are growing, for this that's growing in each of us, it's like, can we be nurtured by the ambience that we experience in each of us, as Michael was sharing from that space? It's like, can that be nurturing for it in our system? And yeah, where it's not just the race for, oh, let me get know all these locations. And there's a sense of, where do I want to abide? Where do I want to rest? What's the equilibrium for me? The mountaintop versus coming down. What's the equilibrium? And Dave and I speak about this a lot. This simultaneous awareness, this full aliveness in this life, and then this ambiance of the fundamental well-being of the essence. How am I doing, Chris? Where you go with this?
Yeah, all of that. There's one thing you were speaking earlier of enjoyment and stuff. I think for me, there's a quieter place that is, quote, more mature. But I mean, I don't want to put that on it, but where it's there isn't much of a need for happy or sad or enjoyment even. I think Michael probably lives there to some degree where those things are not so primary. But I'm doing some thinking, and Jack comes to mind here because he's a good thinker. The question is, am I, how's my well-being, or, am I good with whatever states come and go? Yes. But who here wouldn't want a state that they're finding comfortable or enjoying, compared to one where you're being tortured?
Yes.
I'd rather not have the tortured one. So yeah, there's I like a kind of quiet. I just got back from 21 days of visits and family. So
Yes.
I'm barely off the plane kind of thing here. And
Mm-hmm.
I might be moving 100,000 into a new count for my mom today and stuff like that. So I got a few other things going on, but I'm just so happy to be here in the sense that this is good stuff. One thing I noticed by being with family and stuff, the witnessing, the sense of a separation reduced. There was a background, foreground, even if it was a potent spirituality. There wasn't much of that dualism. And it is a kind of dualism, but I'm now, because of the coming down from the mountain, I'm accepting dualism's okay with me now. If that's what's moving across the screen is a dualistic sense of foreground, background, this, that, who cares? You know, is it working for, so to speak? That
let me
matters.
ask everybody that. Like, what's it like? Chris just spent 21 days with family, and there's the dualism, and even in that, he's describing there was, I guess, the heart connectedness that was there. But what about the dualism when it's there? When Dave is planning, okay, Captain Dave, what do I need? What am I doing today? Where are we going? Is that okay? Is the dualism okay? And then as we find our spot on the mountain, our optimal spot, it's like for Sid, I use the word enjoyment, but for others, it's like, oh, that's a little gross, a little dense for me. It's more subtle for for others where we find our space. How's this playing? And what's coming up for us as we hear Chris share? Anything bubbling in us?
Oh, excuse me. I like the way Chris was telling us about his bok choy. I think that's it's really relevant. So, like for me, I have a part of me that, you know, it's part of my basic personality. Oh, I need to protect myself, right? And you know, you have glimpses, these little bok choy at different times, and there was a super relevant one, you know, um, in that I had, you know, an experience of being separate from, um, like in a place past kind of the 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 personality of myself, personality of Dave, and looking back or looking across isn't really the word, but it was really interesting because in that place is, you know, like Jack says, you know, the fear, the love, the anger, the, you know, enjoyment, the, you know, all of that. And so what was really nice for me is I could see that the fear was there. You know, in moving away, or in having an experience that's past the personality, that's also past the fear. I didn't have to worry, like, you know, oh my God, you know, if I go down this path that, you know, Jeffrey Martin talks about, will I end up in a place where I can't function in my life? And, you know, will it be scary? Will it be good? Will it be bad or whatever? But what's interesting is, you know, I had a little bok choy. I had an experience, and I can look at that and just be like, oh, well, I don't have to worry about fear. I don't have to worry about any of that, because I don't have to worry about worry, because that's all kind of part of the life experience of Dave. And you know, in kind of more in pure awareness, that's not even relevant. You know, that's not even, you know, part of the experience of of you know, of you know, kind of more pure awareness, more pure. And so it was, it was a wonderful experience, and that's kind of what we do get here. You know, somebody will bring something up, and we may end up diving deep into it, or we may just have a glimpse of it or whatever, but it's really nice to kind of get a sense of you know, where we are, what can happen, you know, and all of that. So, and also, oh, sorry, Sid, you've got something.
Oh, you go on. I have a question for
Oh,
you about the fear and
oh,
worry.
okay.
I'm loving that.
And also the you know, we come here because it's really important to us. Obviously, that's why we're here, is to enjoy that connection, that you know, that connection between the parts, you know, kind of like our humanity and our awareness, or divine, or whatever word we want to use, and not just give up the life, the richness of life, but to celebrate it, because we're human at this point, and we have this incredible opportunity to experience the human life. And you know, and part of coming here and spending time with Sid is, you know, he keeps telling us, you know, listen, you know, we have parts, but we can celebrate them. You know, they may not be comfortable, they may be comfortable, but we can celebrate them, and we can also celebrate awareness, our openness at the same time. That was a bit of a ramble.
Yay. I have a question for Dave. With as Dave brought up, and then there's fear and worry that occurs. And it's not a problem. There's fear and worry. But my curiosity for each of us, and I'm going to ask Dave this question, is whatever flavor fear and worry comes up for you, what's your relation to it? What's your relation to it? And the way I make sense of this is just trying to simplify into those three views, but each of us might have our own way. Where what's our relationship to it? Where the first view is we're aware of the fear and worry, but we're just resting as the beingness. We're just resting as the beingness. The second view that Sid does it is there's the fear and worry, and it's just being welcomed and loved and accepted, and it's just included, the Rumi's guest house. And the third view we play with is the sense of that fear and worry is inseparable from beingness. It's Jack's everything expression. How's it play for you, Dave, or does it go between all three of them at just different times? What are you finding?
Yeah, it definitely goes between all three. I mean, in the headless way, we talk about looking out, looking in at the same time. And, it's kind of like celebrating our awareness and celebrating life at the same time. And and being aware of our headlessness or our awareness at the same time. It's just different language, but the same experience. And not that I necessarily identify with headlessness. It's just a wonderful way to access our awareness and life at the same time. And with Sid, it's parts and inner peace, or parts and openness, and so I think that for me, it's also and I don't really have a choice. I've had to kind of dig and discover why I react the way I do to certain things, and be able to celebrate that. Things happened. That's how I know that that's a tree or a rock, or I think I know, and having that perspective, but understand kind of where I came. I was brought up and I was taught that's a rock, or I have an emotional reaction. That's because of things that I've learned in my past, and to be able to see where physically kind of see where it came from, and being caught like actually in the part and analyzing the part, but then to be able to step back and celebrate the part, if that makes sense. Like to be able to understand how it happens, but then also to celebrate it happening, and the how, and celebrating how, understanding how it happens. It's hard to kind of put into words.
Yay. Let's see what that touches in our friends. What do we got when we hear Dave speak of this and how it's playing in his system and how he's making sense of this, and what comes up for us?
I guess I'm kind of seeing the idea of celebrating as swinging one way, almost as an antidote to not accepting. So if my sort of innate bias is to geez, that celebrating would be like an antidote to that, but it's still the pendulum swinging back and forth, right? Like from an oh no to a yay, and it seems like there's something. I'm sounding like a broken record, right? So there's something maybe beyond that swinging back and forth, right? It's hard to describe. Yeah. That's what comes up for me. But yeah, I mean,
Nice.
if I'm not, if I, you know, I guess in one sense, what's beyond celebration, lets celebration come, and it also lets letting go come. Like I don't, that there's like celebrating without being attached, maybe, like enjoying it fully without being attached and think like you really need it to be happy, kind of thing. Yeah, yeah. There's a interesting paradox there. So all these paradoxes are so much fun. I don't know.
Mhm.
They're healing for me anyway.
Anything else bubbling with what Dave just shared and what Jack just shared? Chris, Michael, anything coming?
Michael wants to go next. Okay, well, I guess I didn't I didn't manage to con him into it, so yeah. I'm a little bit interested in this, more than a little bit, in the what we might call collapsing of the witness state and or the duality of the witness state. Because I wasn't having as much witness and mindfulness during those 21 days, even in the
Chris,
periods.
could we pause for just a minute, just
Yep.
before we go there? Just because with what Dave and Jack were saying, there was just I feel like wanting to give that another moment, if we could. Um, because I guess I have something on what Jack was saying too, and it was just appreciating that. Just this sense of one level, the sense of is that cool, Chris? And then we come to
Yeah, in fact, that's what I'd like. Please go.
okay. When Jack speaks of a swinging to celebration, it's as an antidote. I can find that that level where it's the swinging to. There's a bit of an either or, and then he speaks of where the celebration is just an enjoyment. It's just a letting go. It's just the love of what is and seeing the enjoyment, the beauty of what is. Almost like different levels of enjoyment, where enjoyment has this a little bit of charge on the enjoyment of the celebration, right? A little bit of maybe a little bit of doing. We're going to celebrate this. And then there's another level where, and it might even be, Jack uses this word, everything sometimes. It's everything is this, everything. And sometimes they call it the dance of Leela, the joy of life, where everything is just the expression of this. Or maybe it's more like Dave said it. It's like the enjoyment of each of us. It's almost like each of us is this expression and in different time zones and different flavors. And Chris, your enjoyment in seeing all of us. It's like that. There's that enjoyment where there's not a charge. It's almost just like, as the radical non-dualist would say, there's only this. But it's like this. It becomes the beauty of this. Like, of course, when there's only this, it's life, it's love, it's all of this. It's that what we're seeing behind Dave's head, the beauty that's there. It's that. And so I think there's for me, there's really something in what Jack was saying in the different ways of the celebration. Maybe it's the capital C celebration where it's just a celebration of what is, and it just is what's naturally here. It's like love is naturally here, celebration is naturally here. And then there's that other one that Jack's speaking of, and I know both of them so well in my system, the swinging to, the antidote, where the celebration is kind of, it's the healing. It's the healing. The celebration is the healing. There's something happening. You got anything, Jack? Anything else with that?
I'm complete on that one. I'd love to
Anybody
go to
else?
the collapsing of the witness myself. That's always fun.
But just before we move on, we're missing a, a one fifth of the input here, and that would be Sid. What's going on with Sid? How do you fit in with all of this as a as a as a person, as a participant, not as a facilitator?
You know what I loved the most was, Dave, when you were describing almost the different perspectives, and you were saying, and then Sid, and the way what Sid does. And it's like I felt very much like that as one square in that when you were describing that. The like the Sid perspective, or also the sense of, like, I love the mountain thing, and like the Jeffrey locations and layers, and then like the sense of where's Sid's equilibrium. It's like for each of us, like it's coming so differently from each of us today, and there's that the perspective of each of us, and it's just as you described that, Dave, as you were describing. Then there's what Sid does, and he talks about celebration and things, and it's like, okay, that's just very unique flavor. And I hope it, and I'm not talking as the facilitator now, it's like somehow with what you shared, it really helped locate me as I'm with the four of you guys. It's like, okay, this is how this aliveness and awakened awareness is playing, and said, this is where the equation is. This is the way my system is making sense of the two, and where it's finding its equilibrium of the time and the timelessness, the form and the awareness. And I find that really interesting. And have you guys ever done ketamine? It's a legal psychedelic in the United States. And I did it last week. I did a journey with it. And it was really interesting because it's like being on an elevator, and it's almost like you're going through the locations and layers as you take the medicine. You go kind of fall down, and you kind of see these different spaces, and it's almost just like having I hate even talking about it as a psychedelic, because it's just very normal, the whole thing. It's like being with you guys and going on a journey through the locations and layers. And it's like I just did that by myself with this, and there was just such a sense of the different, for me, I call it an elevator, the different places that we can abide, as Chris was describing. Like, he has a sense of these, he knows these different places, and it's like, where am I abiding? And it was really interesting just being with them, and then like, nah, nah, nah. Yes, there it is. There's the space that I'm liking for this marriage of aliveness and awareness, this marriage of Sid as a 57-year-old in time in Memphis right now and living this life, and this 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 fundamental well-being, like the marriage of the two, the balance of the two. Because I take the elevator down further, the fundamental well-being becomes more pervasive, and it becomes just the everything. And maybe what Jack was saying, there's a disappearing, there can be even a disappearing into that. And then you kind of come up a couple floors, and like, oh, there we go, there's the fun and the sit in time and playing and going on a date and doing these things. And so that's been really interesting. And that's the Sid square right now. And just as I do with you guys, and we all do with each other, anything come up for you guys as I share that?
The talking of your journey with ketamine, it's interesting when we go to kind of a deeper layer, and I'll call it a layer, whatever, a deeper place. I'm not good with the layers and locations. I haven't kept up on it. I don't remember how they all work, other than depth or whatever you want to call it. But we can go to a place where we're kind of just nothing but open. And then communication doesn't isn't important, and emotions pass and all that kind of stuff. But whoops, I can't stay there. It's like going underwater and holding my breath. You know, it's great to be there for a while, look around, but whoops, I got to come back because I got to eat. I have a life, I have a job, a family, and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, when we go on a journey like that, when we go to a place, we can be in a place where we transition past our language and our kind of thoughts and all of that, and just rest in wide open oneness. But we've all made a choice on not staying there because, you know, we may have family or things that we need to accomplish, including communication, eating, and we kind of make a conscious choice to, or whatever the word is, come back at least part of the way to a place where we can walk around and eat. And
I'm wondering, Dave, it's a little different here in Sid, and like each of us have it differently. In Sid, it's a little different. It's more like, and we can almost feel it in each of us, where each of us have chosen to abide in this. It's almost like there's a sense of, it doesn't feel like, sometimes it feels like the underwater, then you got to come up for the breath, but it feels different. It's more like, and then there's a sense of a choice. If we could, you know, if even if you could abide in that absolute nothing openness all the time, it's like, it's strange to say, do you want to? But would you want that? Do you want that? Like I like thinking of the optimal. Like, what is it that we want in the relation? And not even if you didn't have to, if you didn't have to come up for, well, I need to eat and plan things. If you could eat and do all of those things from this place, I'm still suggesting that in me, it's an interesting the sense of choosing the optimal place, location in all of this. Where you go with that, Dave?
yeah, I think the yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying. It my experience has been one of needing to come back to function. But could I keep part of that or keep that and function? I haven't considered that. So yes, it's possible. When you said that, I realized it would be possible to keep that and function. But what I want to, and that's the yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. What do you say this? This is one of my difficulties with the POK community sometimes, because we get so the locations, and it's almost like what Chris was saying, speed reading. It's like a race to the end. And it's like, yeah, that's cool. It's really cool to find these locations, and the ones I haven't touched yet, you know, and it's like cool to find them. But then there's still, it's like, but then where we want to, then there's still for me, the question of where do we want to abide in that? Or maybe we just play and dancing through all of it. But it's like, that's what's so interesting for me, is each of us decide what that looks like for us. Anything else before we go to the collapse of the witness with Chris? Anything else on any of this? Michael, Jack, anything? Or anything else, Dave? Let's collapse the witness. Chris, take us into a new land.
Well, the new land is the ordinary land. I always had suspicions when people would say, though, there's some great master, you can hardly tell, you know, they're so ordinary, as if that's a great credential of ordinariness. But I'm having to admit that it's now looking, based on my great research, which is of course too small a sample size, that there's some truth in that damn thing. You know, see, I always figured all these great masters I'd seen, the ones that had the most obvious, powerful aura, had to be the deepest in there. And now that's not clear to me at all. but there's this other component to it. This is where we need Jack's mind. Give us a few weeks if you'd let this one roll around in your head, Jack. I was just with some of those famous guys in the Vita set were partly influenced by a guy I just spent a little bit of time with. He's a close friend of one of my friends, and I knew this guy years ago. And I asked him, after purposefully meeting with the friends, a couple days later in Vancouver, I'm at 12th and Granville, one of the busiest places, and of all places in the world. This guy just got off the plane from India a week ago. He lives in India. And I see him walking
Who is?
straight
Give us a
towards
name.
me.
Give us a name. Who is this guy?
His name's Murray Feldman. He was known for being he owned a homeopathy school or something. Yeah, I remember. That's right. I was even a patient of his for a little while. So anyway, I asked Murray what his experience was, and he said, "Oh, by the way, he's kind of improving Andrew Cohen, which is a good thing for those of you who know who Andrew Cohen, the spiritual teacher, is. He's also guilty of creating him to some degree. But anyway, I asked Murray as we're walking down the street in a big hurry, because I had friends waiting for me. I'm outside a bank waiting for my wife and stuff. This is hilarious. So anyway, then I run into Murray and I asked him about ordinariness. I said, I'm seeing some of that in POK stuff. He doesn't know POK. Is that really how it is? And he said, sort of, that even in that state that he's in, that even though it looks like there's no chasing of, cool energies or God stuff or any of that anymore, he says, very ordinary in many ways, yet a little bit different from that. And he said, even now, there can be occasions when a little bit of anger or a moment of anxiety can show up. And his take on it, so I said, is it because we got the ape body that thing itself, so long as it's there, it's going to have some wants and dislikes, and maybe our gut bacteria owns us, whatever. And he thought there's always going to be some of that with the body. And so, so my suspicions that you could work your psychology to death, mommy, daddy stuff, never get 100% free. So might be better to live your life in a good way, and if there's big stuff in your face, deal with it. But anyway, back to the witness. So it looks like Murray, from a totally different school, totally different group of friends, totally immersed in the Ramna stuff. I mean, he lives about 10, on the other side of the mountain from the Ramna ashram. Yeah, he's saying that from one line, and I'm listening to Leona and so the Rostel guys and Luciano. It's coming that way from the other side too, that the great, glorious, glowing light that we once were does quiet down to such a degree that the person becomes pretty boring looking on the outside, or at least somewhat ordinary, that's common. But I don't know the depth of the Karen Thorson, but she still seems to got energy pouring out of every pore. So maybe it depends on. Leona says her ordinariness still has a bit of the magic there. And I don't think she's saying that she considers that immature. So it may be possible to still have some of that depending on the person's orientation. But it does seem, one of the guys said his witness disappeared. Mine did these last 3 weeks, even in quote spiritual states. But I wonder, maybe
What's
Jack
that,
can
Chris?
let this
Chris,
go.
when you described that your witness disappeared, what's that? Tell us what's that like?
In a way, very much like a person who hasn't done spirituality, where there's an immediacy of your experience. That's not my sense of where, for example, Michael, if I don't, you don't mind me using you for an example, my sense of you is that you have quite a bit of insight in the way the Vipassana guys and the Theravadins would say, that you have a sense of what arises in you. You actually, there's a noticing of emotion or no emotion, openness, more, less openness, all of that, that requires a witness to notice it. You know, it's not dead silent one thing. And it doesn't seem to matter to me. I'm not so sure. I'm more accepting that the states change, where there's open awareness and not open, and then other times not, because sometimes there's an open awareness, but it doesn't have a lot of beauty to it. And sometimes there's not much witness, but there's a real sense of joy and beauty that are good well-being stuff, you know. So anyway, somebody else should talk around here because I think I've laid out a whole bunch of stuff. I'll just confuse everybody if I don't stop here.
What we got? Where we go with that?
Yeah,
Also, go ahead, please.
okay. Yeah, I like what you said, Chris. That's very similar to my experience also. It's pretty much like that. And I'm also in a group with these guys, so we often discuss it. It's like yeah, a lot of things. Everything is just kind of easy and normal, and it's a lot like before I started this whole spiritual journey, and before I had any interest in spirituality. So a lot of things are kind of like that, like being back to location one. So that's exists, and most of the time it kind of feels like very normal. It's just like I feel like the same as everybody. Like there is no real difference. But then occasionally when we start talking about like in experience and perceptions, then I can notice the difference. But most of the time it's not. It's just very normal. I don't know about the witness. That's it's a tricky one to how you define it, how you see if it's there or not. It's sort of, I don't have an answer to that one. But yeah,
Sequoia says she doesn't even experience vibrations anymore. Whatever you'd call that, you know, something outside the physical. I think she met other people and their vibe and things like that. With this group, I don't feel like I'm violating things, but I could kind of sense each person here on an energetic level, and that would be normal for me most of my life, but I'd have to tone it down, just like my loud voice. It's always working to tone. So with this, it's there some of the time, but it doesn't matter the way once I think I defined myself as sort of being everything and the ability to experience or sense everyone, everything, something like that. Not just as a whole thing, but even individually, the happy, sad in the person, all that. And now in a way, it doesn't matter to
Oops.
location one some of the time. Yeah, sometimes I'm getting it that way, just like that, and then no big giant open awareness.
yeah, but then there's also a huge difference. Like somebody might have, you know, most people they would have a belief and they don't know about it, and it lasts forever. Like even if people point out to them or show to them, you know, you see it in politics and everywhere. And for me, most of the time, it like it kind of comes and goes. It might stay a little bit, but it comes and goes. Everything sort of comes and goes. So it's rare that things stay for a long time. And so that's the big thing I see that's different. There was also something else that I wanted to comment that you mentioned earlier, but now it escaped me. What was the thing that you mentioned in the beginning of your last comment?
Well, what I wanted to open with, and perhaps did not, is even though I think it's maybe 40% true, it seems like the friend of mine who's deeply knows Jungian stuff, Carl Gustav Jung, very, very well. He once said to me, the psychology circumscribes surrounds the spiritual, not the other way. And although I would disagree with that, I'm wondering if this thing of coming down from the mountain, the condensing in a sense, and yes, it's not the same condensing as a 18-year-old normal boy has, but that I'm wondering if part of it is, or at least the mechanism, is the psychology, where when we've gone out to this deeper states or farther locations than the body's used to, than the mind's used to, if the denser psychology, so to speak, shadow side as well, pulls us back into something less out there, something more solid. And maybe that's okay. Maybe it's more comfortable in a good way, not a way of being afraid or cheap. Maybe that's okay. But I have this sense there's something, the 60%, what's that pulls us? So it might be, Luciano said to me, the process is awake, it's alive, and that it has a way of its own, and so you surrender to it. But Michael, what do you say about that? Do you feel the process is alive and that I don't believe in a doer, an agency, but it seems like there's mechanisms that'll feel a little like that, but I think they're bullshit, but maybe the whole thing is a process. But is it the psychology pulling us back from those late locations?
Well, for me now, it's all the locations, it's all gone in a way. It's just there. It's like I might feel happy or I might feel sad. I have pain, I feel sad. I see a good friend, I feel happy. It just kind of happens in the moment. That's locations sort of feel similar to me now. They don't have a particular meaning. Like I cannot meditate anymore, literally. It just makes no sense to sit and meditate, yet there is still conditioning. So conditioning arises. Actually still working, I'm still doing therapy because there is still some, relatively heavy conditioning. It does not really, like it used to bring me into this freeze, this panic. It doesn't do that anymore, but it's still there. So it still affects so I still work with it. But what you mentioned about the sense that I also had a similar experience some time ago. Previously, I used to be able to sense people, to sense a lot of stuff in people, and like the whole emotional stuff and their, and they're like all sorts of stuff. And I was doing all the vortex healing and other healing modalities, and then suddenly it kind of just disappeared, and it felt like it was just there because it was a reflection of something I had. So I was seeing that in other people and I was sensing that in other people, and it was actually a reflection of my own stuff. And then as I became more clear, I guess, that no longer, and often there were people who just the energy sort of irritated me. And that started to happen, and that used to happen from time to time. And then it sort of just, it's very rare now. And I don't sense things in people anymore, but I kind of notice that if I pay attention, I can sort of see, I can sort of feel people's energies in a way, but it's more like now it's just sort of natural. So yeah, it's all like that. There is also, the other thing is kind of the downside of that, if you would, is that there is nowhere to hide, just like Ram Dass said, there is nowhere to hide. And yeah, it's like the process, things are just happening. There is nothing I can do. It's at some point of the journey, it became clear to me that it's just gonna happen the way it happens. There is a timing to things. It just goes the way it goes. And even then, for a while, there was a period where I didn't have a sense of self, didn't have a sense of agency, and then it came back kind of in a slightly different way. But even then, it still feels like things just sort of happen. They have a timing of their own. So there is no, yeah, it happens as it happens, that process. And then there is still conditioning, and there is like personality stuff that's there, but it's no longer personal, it's no longer like attached to, but it's still there because it's the conditioning. And I feel like conditioning is all we are. If you have no conditioning, will be nothing. There would be nothing left. We wouldn't know how to, how to speak, how to breathe, how to hold our body, because all of this stuff is conditioned. All this stuff is what we learn. So I'm kind of like Jeffrey's approach, that what he said about conditioning is that you have to be practical about it. You cannot decondition everything, but some things are certainly worthwhile to decondition if they're gonna bother you more. That's sort of the approach I also use in that sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny, even the agency thing, I think you sort of came by that when you're speaking, but even if there's a sense of agency for a second, it's seen as a part, and there's no attitude about it. Whereas when I lived very much in the land of Advaita, all my friends deeply into Advaita, um, having any kind of selfing or sense of a personhood or an agent would have been a horror. That, oh my God, that thing is, for a split second, it rearose. Oh shit. This and then you go back to open awareness and be there totally. And now it's like, oh, there's a little feeling of agency. Isn't that funny? So I think, or so what? That's probably how you experience it, Michael, that it could, even agency can show up for a second as a part and then it disappears. And so what?
It's, I don't know, it doesn't register as agency. It doesn't really, I don't notice it. But what I do notice is occasionally um, there is this thing that's like the controller or the doer. Like sometimes there would be something, and then okay, like I want a certain outcome to happen, and there is a kind of mental process and whatever, and so that happens from time to time. And some of the other guys who, so the Rustle and Eric and like the assistant, there is this omni and post omni, and it's what I'm told, I'm somewhere in between. But the guys who are like in this post omni, they don't have that anymore. So what they're saying is they don't have that sort of controller as I understand it. So that just sort of gone completely, and there is just this autopilot and things just happen. But there is still a way to, like, they can still describe things, they can still introspect to some extent. So it's not like they become robots, which was my concern at some point. But like they say, the Buddha was able uh, to walk, to talk to people, to eat, to do everything after his enlightenment. So yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
And thanks for bringing it up, Chris. I like the the shifts you are going through and all that, and the comments. So that's
Leona thinks so it's not clear that what I'm experiencing is integration. It could be just the seeking stopped 4 weeks ago approximately, and it's very new to me after 50 some odd years of it, of seeking. But
yeah.
I don't know where this goes.
Well, the integration process at various, for me, it's been like a year and a half since the kind of the seeking stopped, since location 4 and so on, and now it feels like integration is kind of closer to the end, but it's still ongoing. So I think it's a very long process of integration. So it was quite a ride. So
Leona
you might,
says stay in integration as long as you can because she said she liked integration very much. I don't know if she's what you call post-omni or not. I think she might say that. I don't know. But she said integration, if you can stay there and you're liking it, do it. But I don't know if it's any better. I have moments when like when I got off the plane and I was back here only 24 hours, not even 12 hours, being in my own house. Of course, it's Sedona. The vibe here is tremendous. So I realized I like more the kind of Michael state, my sense of you, where there's a certain silence in the midst of even if something arises.
Hey, Chris, I'd like to interject something real quick since we've just got 5 minutes left.
Oh, sorry.
First off, I just like to say we just can't pass up when you say, and then the seeking stopped after 50 years a month ago. It's like that's when we throw a party, there's like, yay, just to that. I mean, it's beautiful. And I love how Michael's there. It happened a year and a half ago, and there's been integration now. I wish we threw parties for that transition. It's like, yay. And then also, I mean, you and Michael, it's been just so exquisite. And before we run out of time, just to see if Jack and Dave have anything to add, and then you guys can kind of close it for us. Jack, Dave.
I'm happy listening.
Yeah, I sort of had four things that came up, which I could let go of because I just jotted them down. My kind Buddhist teachers would always say, "Oh, isn't it wonderful that Buddha manifests as a human being so we could actually relate to him?" So part of this manifestation of a human being is we wouldn't be able to relate if they weren't something. You know what I mean? It makes them relatable. That's important, right? And different different tact, but I think I said witness dissolved, but it could almost be more like the witness is included as opposed to dissolved. Okay. That puts a little different flavor on it, right? And then this whole idea of psychology, right? Whatever, I believe in that there's different states of development. Like my 5-year-old grandson is not at the same state as my 8-year-old granddaughter, is not the same as me when I was a teenager versus, whatever stage of development you're at, right? And I do think that if you're talking psychology, that's pretty well documented that what happens is the psychology interprets the states. The psychology interprets it. And because it's interpreted so differently at different levels of development, and because a level of development, unless you study them, is like, the fish in water. Like, I'm at this level of development, of course I am. You don't even question it because it's so much a part of you. You can't see it. So this thing you can't necessarily see interprets whatever it is, whatever state or whatever. I don't really look at the witness as a state because it's technically always there, and I don't really look at that headlessness as a state because you realize that I've always been headless. Whether I realize it before or not, it's always been true, right? And then Michael said something that interests me. He said he can't meditate anymore. And I just was curious what this meditation was that he couldn't do. Because for me, meditation is such a, I don't know, it's like moving around. I mean, there's so many different types of meditation that when people say they can't meditate or they don't like meditation, I'm always just curious as what it was that they couldn't do or couldn't like to understand what they're saying, sort of. But yeah, those are the things that kind of came up for me. But yeah. I'm now that I've been able to say those, I'm complete, guys. I am complete. No need to answer them or do anything with that, but that's what came up.
We are at time. I don't know if it's bubbling for Michael to respond to that. And I just want to say it's such a treat having Chris and Michael here today. And I hope you'll come back and play with us again. And again, Chris, yay to this with the whatever shift has happened for you and Michael and sharing with us about your integration. I am so grateful for that. There's just so much enjoying that. And Michael, anything I don't know if you wanted to respond to Jack's question before we close quickly.
Yeah, well, I want to say, yeah, Chris, in case you want to chat sometime, you're welcome to message me and Sid as well and others. And I remembered a spiritual joke. Well, it's half joke, half actual story. Which I think might be a good way to finish. This guy who was a seeker for a while went to this Indian guru, this awake, like fully awake Indian guru, and he told him, I've been seeking for so long, so many years and decades, and I cannot find, and it's so elusive. And what do I do? How, like, what is it that prevents me from finding what I'm seeking? And the guy says, what prevents you from finding? Well, the seeking, of course.